Welcome, everyone. Dr. Anthony Criniti IV here, also known as Dr. Finance. Welcome to the Dr. Finance Live podcast. We have an amazing guest today. We got Dr. Joe Vitale here. He is one of the members of the Secret Film. He's got so many amazing books. He's a leader in the mindset space, in so many other fields of arena. We're going to learn about the law of attraction and all kinds of amazing, cool stuff. So let's give a warm welcome for Dr. Joe Vitale. Welcome, Dr. Joe. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fine. Thanks for that warm welcome and the introduction and for the invitation to be here. Been looking forward to this. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you being here. All right. So, Dr. Joe, before we get started, if we can, let's do a quick 30-second snapshot of yourself. You want to tell us a little about yourself before we get into your story, which we're definitely going to get into your story. I know you got an incredible story.
I don't know what to say. I'm an author. I've written 80-some books. I'm a musician. I have 15 albums. I'm in several movies, about 20 of them at this point. The most noteworthy is The Secret. I've been traveling around the world, going to countries I didn't know existed until the pandemic anyway, telling people about a new way of living. I have written books that have really awakened people, including a book called Zero Limits, which brought the idea of Ho'oponopono to the masses. And I am a guy who's really just following his passion and doing his best to ignite a fire under other people so that they go for their dreams too.
That is awesome. Thank you, Dr. Joe. All right. So, Dr. Joe, let's get into your story. You have an incredible story, I believe, from rags to riches. So let's talk about your childhood. Where are you originally from, and how was it like growing up there?
Well, I was born and raised in Ohio in a small town called Niles, and lower middle class family. My father was fresh out of the Marines. I was his firstborn, and he treated me like I was in the Marines. And he took me to work, which was laboring on the railroad at the age of 5. So 5 years old, I was on the railroad tracks. And it could be argued what I was doing, but he taught me how to work. And I think that work ethic is still with me today, because it's pretty hard for me not to keep doing and producing and being prolific. I would say it was basically, as I look back on it, an unhappy childhood. I turned to books, and still do, because they were my dependable friends. They didn't hurt me. They didn't disappoint me. They were always there, and I can go on escapades and adventures and meet characters and get wisdom, all from books. Somewhere along the line, even though I wanted to be a magician at some point and a baseball player at some point and a private detective at one point, I decided I would be an author. And there began my quest, which ended up lasting decades, going through childhood, going through college. And I was a terrible student in all aspects of it, but I was outstanding at my own self-study, putting myself through a curriculum of learning how to be a writer and making myself really work at it so that I can develop skills. But it was a long, hard road. I was homeless in Dallas, Texas. I was in poverty for a good 10 years in Houston, Texas, and my first book wasn't published until 1984. It came and went as a shooting star. I wouldn't even call it a star. It was a dud. And it was another 10 years before the next book would come out. So that's the, sprinted overview of growing up.
Thank you, Dr. Joe. I'd like to deep dive with let's start with, go to your teenage years. So after, growing up and you're working really hard, your teenage years, were you equally working hard? What kind of jobs did you have, being an early entrepreneur? Were you taking on a lot of different types of jobs?
I was not an entrepreneur. I didn't even know what the word entrepreneur meant until I was almost in my 30s, but I did know what labor was. Because my father had me on the railroad at the age of 5, he kept me on the railroad. There was never any allowances, but there was always work provided. And so weekends and summers were all labor on the railroad. Wow. And that was true throughout my entire life growing up. I did take a couple Boy Scout oriented jobs. I was a quartermaster at a Camp Chickagami, as I remember it, in Pennsylvania. But those were rare anomalies. For the most part, I was working construction. We were building and repairing railroad tracks. When Lordstown, Ohio was building Chevys, we built all the railroad tracks within that enterprise. So I would say I didn't know anything about being an entrepreneur. All I knew was here's work, you're getting an hourly wage, and I knew how to use my muscles. I hated it. That was an important takeaway. I hated it. And every minute of it, or almost every minute of it, I was thinking, oh, one day I'm going to be a writer. One day I won't have to do this. So yeah, labor, railroad, me.
Wow. So when you got to your 20s, where was it, at what point did you start breaking away from the railroad and going into the academic version of what you wanted to be, to get on that path, which took you to today?
Well, in high school, I was experimenting with writing. I had written an article for the school newspaper, and I won an award from Kent State University. Just enough of an award, a very minor thing, but enough of an award to give me that drop of encouragement that said, keep going that way. And so I did go to Kent State University, but I had no intentions of actually studying. I wanted to be a pilot at that point, and my father wanted me to go to college. So he said, if I pay for flight school at Kent State University, will you go to Kent State University? I did. I got my private pilot's license in 1972, which was a mega accomplishment for an insecure and shy guy to be able to apply himself to get a pilot's license in 10 weeks. It was truly a crash course, and calling it a crash course is unfortunate because we're learning how to fly, for God's sake. But I went to Kent State to learn writing. And as I mentioned earlier, I was not a good student. I failed almost all my classes. Even growing up, I was in the slow row in the grade school classes where they put everybody that's slow or handicapped in some way on the far left in their own row. I was in that row. So I did not come out of the gate or the womb with some sort of special talent or higher IQ. None of that was there. But in college, I did more intensely pursue being a writer. I remember writing a novel. I remember writing plays. None of it was going anywhere. All of it got me rejection slips, but I was getting up and persisting. That was becoming my desire for a vocation. I wanted to make my life from that. I wanted to make a difference from writing what I thought would be novels and plays at the time. And again, we got to remember, this is in the 1970s. There's no internet. Everything is being done by hand. You're packing a manila envelope with your articles or books. You're sending it out. You're waiting weeks to months to get a rejection slip. And then I'm devastated, have to repair my self-esteem and then go through the whole cycle again. But I would say that I'm still working on the railroad. Weekends and any time off from school, I was doing the construction during that time.
So you eventually graduated from college, is that right?
Never graduated.
Oh.
I mean, I got my degrees like 30 years later. I left without them. I kept failing economics. Wow. I had a very tough time with the instructor who was teaching that class, and I left without a degree. I was just I don't know what you call them, 2 hours short, 2 credits short, something like that to actually get a degree. I was like, I'm out of here. I had a potential job in Dallas, Texas with, I think they were called the Success Motivation Institute. And the Success Motivation Institute was it Paul Myers? I might have his name wrong at this point, but they were selling self-help tapes. They were selling cassettes, and they were the Zig Ziglar of the time. They were the Napoleon Hill of the time. They were selling like Nightingale Conant in later years. They were selling self-improvement products, and I had a chance to represent them. So I flew to Dallas, Texas, where it did not work out and where I ended up being homeless.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's how that happened. Okay. Do you know Jim Cathcart, by the way? Because
Not personally.
He was, he had a similar story with the Earl Nightingale cassettes and all that stuff. And Dennis Waitley came after. From my understanding, he was like the third highest selling, cassette tape person for motivation.
Yeah. Well, all of those tapes ended up influencing me, and all of those companies I ended up being an author within. And people that you just mentioned, especially Dennis Waitley, deeply influenced me.
Wow.
The fact that I got to meet him for the first time only, I don't know, 2 years ago at this point, and he was so complimentary to me, made me cry. I was melting in front of him, because back in the cassette days and poverty days and struggle days, it was tapes by him and some of the other self-improvement people, including Earl Nightingale, that got me up in the morning, that got me going, that kept me going. So I'm well aware of their impact and power and those individuals.
That's incredible. And I got to commend you, by the way, for going back years later to finish up your college degree. That's definitely a huge.
Yeah, I forget. That might have been around 2005. I went and finished that degree, and I went and got 2 doctorates after that. Wow. And but not during the time I was, not in the 70s, not when I'm confused, trying to find myself, working on the railroad, trying to be a writer. I'm backward, immature, insecure. Not back then. I couldn't finish them back then.
What was your thoughts on college while you were in there? Like, did you think that it was a productive experience for not just you, but for people in general? You think it was worth it for people to go to college at that point?
What a question. I have my truthful answer and I have my socially acceptable answer.
Okay.
I think it was playtime and party time. I actually signed up for all the extracurricular activities, from learning how to fly to karate. I actually started the Kent State University Aikido Club. Wow. You know, there was probably my first taste of entrepreneurship. I wanted to learn the martial art called Aikido. And there wasn't anybody in Northeast Ohio that was teaching it. But there was a black belt within driving distance who was willing to come to Kent State University if I could gather enough students. And I went to the Kent State University Council. I asked what it took to create a club. I created my first advertisement was for the Kent State University Aikido Club. And I remember designing it. My God, there's no computer involved. This is typesetting. This is using a mimeograph machine. This is getting blue ink all over your fingers when you're trying to figure out how to play the flyer over the drum and turning it. So, and I did create the Aikido Club, and it was a success, and it ran for the entire time I was there. So to answer your earlier question, I was an entrepreneur without knowing the word entrepreneur, but I was following my passion. There was something I wanted to learn, and it was that. But otherwise, college was extracurricular fun for me. I learned more, and I still do learn more on my own. And I think if there's something to learn there, it's the idea that when a person follows their own particular passion and they really go after what they want to learn, there's no stopping them. They will devour information at that point because they want to. But when we go into a curriculum and we're told, oh, you have to take this class, and you have to take this class, and you have to take this subject, and most of the time we're not interested at all, it's very difficult to absorb it, let alone retain it. So I guess I'm talking and thinking out loud about a different kind of university, and it probably exists out there and I'm not aware of it, but one that is more passion driven. What do you want to learn? And go and take those classes and figure out some way to make that work for you.
Are you a big Steven Seagal fan?
Steven Seagal. Well, I am, I don't know how big of a fan I am, but I certainly like him, and I've liked the movies I've seen of him, sure.
The reason I asked you is because the Aikido.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I'm probably more of a Jackie Chan fan.
Okay. Yeah, I love his movies. And you're doing some kind of soft martial arts now, I believe, too. I thought I saw that on your bio.
Wow. Yes, I was doing Qigong for a very long time. I had gone through learning Aikido. I had a little bit of interest in karate, but I didn't seem to be that great at it. I had a deep interest in boxing. I thought I was going to be the heavyweight boxing champion of the world when I was 18 years old. And that was another example of I really got into it and I passionately pursued it. And I didn't need a coach or a trainer or anything because I put myself through a training regime that most people would not have done. But because I was so convinced that I could be heavyweight boxing champion at 18, I did that. Now, as time went on, I met heavyweight boxing champions, Floyd Patterson, George Foreman. I corresponded with Muhammad Ali. I was on a speaking engagement just 2 years ago with Mike Tyson. These guys would have demolished me. They would have breathed on me and I would have turned to dust. So I have an interest still in all of these different things, but how good I am in it, who's to say? But Qigong is an internal martial art. And that's more in alignment. I'm very much in understanding what our mind power is, our spiritual power is, and how we can direct our inner power. And Qigong has a history in China that is 5,000 years old, if not older. And so I've studied it and I've practiced it, and I got some sort of certification in it a decade or more ago. So you are correct, and I'm impressed that you looked that up.
Well, I'm a martial artist. I noticed this.
Good for you. Good.
That's awesome. So yeah. So about your 30s or so, you really started to get into this book stuff. You want to tell us about some of your experiences right before you really started to take off, before The Secret? Because we're going to talk about The Secret in a little bit.
Well, there was a lot that took place before The Secret because I was struggling and starving for a very long time. I mentioned going through homelessness. I mentioned being in poverty. During all of that, I was trying to be an author. I was trying to be a writer. I was going for my dream as best I could, as clumsily as I could. But nothing was really working out for me. I did write a play in college, so that would have been around 1973, that was produced in 1979. And it was one of the highlights of my life. In 1979, we don't have cell phones or handheld cameras, so it was never documented. It was written up in the newspapers. I did win an award for that particular play that I wrote. It was a one-act comedy. I got to see it brought to life. I was there for all the rehearsals. It was done at the University of Houston. Major deal, and a guy who's been in poverty for a long time and once homeless. Yet, the next morning, I woke up broke. I was not changed at all. There was no difference in my career. There was no difference in my success. There was no difference in my bank account. All I can say was, well, I wrote a play in 1973 and it was produced in 1979, and that's it. My first book wasn't until 1984. And during that time, again, I'm writing articles. I started to write book reviews for New Age magazines. There was one called New Age. I wrote it for Yoga Journal. There was one called East West Journal magazine, and they would pay $25 for a book review. And I was so obsessed about being a great writer, I would work and rewrite and chisel those reviews until they were as perfect as I could make them. I get $25. And the $25 seemed like a hell of a lot of money to a guy who didn't have zip for the longest period. So the first book is published in 1984, Cause for Celebration. I'm finally an author. And yet it's disappointing because I discover publishers don't know anything about actually marketing books. They're glorified printers. So in 1984, I'm going, I got a book. And then I realized nobody cares. Nobody cares and nobody buys it. And so that was a turning point for me because I had to learn marketing. I didn't know entrepreneurship. I didn't know marketing, publicity, copywriting. I learned all of it. And why? Because my first client needed it, me. I learned how to be a great copywriter. I learned about publicity and news releases. I learned about book reviews. I learned about the operations of the book business. And I ended up selling quite a bit of the books. I also started classes, and I was the most reluctant, the most insecure, the most bashful speaker on earth. There were 6 people in my first class. The class was just the title of the book. And it was to sell the book, really. I had read that if they liked me as a speaker, they may buy my book at the back of the room. So I try it. I nearly threw up. I was shaking against the wall. I was sweating. It was dripping off of me. My knees were going to buckle. I was terrified. But I went back and did it again. went back and did it again. And over time, I got a little better and I got a little more comfortable, and I kept selling copies of my book. I ended up getting a letter from my publisher who said, "You sold more copies of the book than we did or anybody else did." I was like, no kidding. That's because I learned marketing. And as I started to make a little bit of a name for myself, I was living in Houston, Texas at the time, other people noticed. And they would say, "We notice your book's getting reviewed, or you're getting in the newspaper, or they're talking about you. How are you doing it?" And I tell them, I said, "Well, I'm doing this marketing stuff." Well, the next thing you know, I'm now a marketing consultant, and I'm charging, and I think it was $25 an hour to advise people on how they can do their own marketing. And then they would say, "I don't want to do the marketing. Let me hire you." Next thing you know, I'm a copywriter and I'm being hired to write copy for their books. And I did that for lots of people in Houston. I was nickel and diming it because I didn't know how to price. I didn't know my own value. I was new to it. There's no internet to go do the research on what are the competing prices. And so I was stumbling my way to slowly make a name for myself, first as an author, now as a publicist, and more importantly, I seem to have a strength for copywriting. That led to me going, well, if I had another book to sell in the back of the room, besides the first one, maybe I can double my money. And so I wrote a little book and called it Hypnotic Writing. Hypnotic writing being all about copywriting. And I would teach the class called Hypnotic Writing and tell people, you need to learn how to write copy. You need your cover for your book to be copywritten, news releases you need to send out, the advertisements you make, the sales letters you make. You need to know this. And where do you learn it? In hypnotic writing. And I put a price tag of $70 on that book, crossed it out and said, only $35 here and there.
It's on sale.
I started to make a little bit of money. Still a little bit, but I was going in the direction of, oh, this is what an entrepreneur does. Oh, this is what a smart author does. They don't just do one kind of writing. They learn and branch out to different kinds and keep trying it.
Dr. Joe, I'd like to pause right there because as I'm hearing your story, I don't know if you know how much you know about me, but I actually, like, the words you're saying is my life. That's exactly what happened to me.
Really?
And you did this 30 years before me. Like, I had 3 books sitting out there for 10 years with 1 review. And then it really wasn't until the pandemic that I said, enough is enough. I'm a product of my own teaching. I teach finance, but marketing is a part of finance. And like, I didn't market my own books. I was expecting the universities to help me and support.
Right.
Like, how foolish was that? 10 years went by. And now, of course, I mean, a lot of things have changed. I got a book coming out in Korean and all this other stuff, but I went through the same experience as you. But to hear you say it in 1984, this happened to you, I'm like, wow. Like, as I'm hearing this, I'm like, there's other people out there who have the same pain. It's
Right.
incredible.
Well, it's also this is a lesson. From an entrepreneurial standpoint, what this means is there's a market of people who need a service that will help them. So if I went through this and was looking around, if there had been a copywriter or marketer or somebody or some service that could have helped me, I would have worked out some sort of deal. You went through the same thing for 10 years, wondering how am I going to get this done? What I'm highlighting is here's an opportunity for somebody watching to leap and go, let me help all those people who have a book and don't know how to market it.
Absolutely. And one thing I also want to commend you for, Dr. Joe, is, folks, he's also a marketing expert. And I know just the way you moved for this interview and for the Clubhouse event we got coming up soon, how fast you moved. I recognize that you are definitely like a top of your game for marketing. I mean, you were able to figure out, I mean, it seems easy to us, right? But it's not to all people. You were able to figure out Clubhouse in literally like an hour or less. You already had the bio up. I only had to tell you one time. I came back an hour later. You had your bio. You had the clubs you all selected. Like, you had the link to your Twitter page. And I'm like, oh my God, well, that's crazy. Like, most people I tell about Clubhouse, it takes them a month to figure out how to work the microphone.
Wow. Wow. Well, thank you. I was just doing what was there to do. I wrote a book called Money Loves Speed. And I'm in the movie The Secret saying the universe loves speed. So there's this aspect that I've learned that whether it's for money or it's just to please the universe or whatever your concept of it is, delaying doesn't get any results. Putting things off doesn't get any of the things that we're actually longing for. So if somebody says, here's what we're going to do, and all you have to do is join Clubhouse. I didn't know what Clubhouse was. As I told you, I had heard about it for a while when it first came out. Then it seemed to die off, so I wasn't interested. But you said we're going to do an event there. We got the date for it. Join Clubhouse. I'm just like, yes, universe likes speed. Yes, money likes speed. Yes, let's do this now.
Wow.
It's a lesson for all of us.
Absolutely. That was a great lesson. And also, what I add, you also figured out, here's where I know that you're also great in marketing, because you figured out how to share it on, I believe it was Twitter and maybe a few other sites. You had actually shared the link to the event that we have scheduled. So you figured out the calendar too. I mean, that's so quickly. I mean, that's awesome. That means you can adapt to any platform that they put out there. You're ready to go. Once you figure out the use for it, that it is useful, like that's a true marketer right there.
Well, I don't know that I'd go that far and say I'm ready for any platform they put out there, but I am willing to try, and I am willing to learn, and I am willing to fail. And I think that's another important lesson. When I speak, because I'm uncomfortable just speaking about myself, I always try to speak in terms of here's what you can learn from what I'm saying. And so when I stop and kind of put this into terms for a viewer to consider, it's because I'm thinking of them. I don't want them just to be thinking of me. I want them to think of what I'm doing that they can apply. And learning how to be okay with failure, or okay with looking foolish, or okay with something not working out is a great secret to success. You mentioned that I quickly learned Clubhouse and I quickly learned Twitter. Well, if you look real close, I didn't quickly learn how to integrate Instagram and Clubhouse. And I did wrestle with it for a little bit. Then I said, well, the hell with this. I'll just skip it. I'll figure it out later, or somebody will tell me how to do it, or I just simply won't use it. So it wasn't 100% like Joe just went in and clicked. It was all there like I was a 13-year-old who was born with a computer in my hand. It was more like I struggled a little bit. Some things that worked, did them. Some things didn't work, skip it. I was okay with it.
Mm. And if it makes you feel better, I actually just recently added Instagram to the Clubhouse platform. I've been on here since the beginning this year. So
that does help. See, it also is, it's comforting to know it's not just me.
Plus, there's that whole thing of, give a little mystery too. So,
right.
But
right.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Joe. All right, we're going to pivot to talk about your books now. So can you tell us a little bit about like how many books do you have? Maybe just give us a summary of those and things.
Yeah, well, that would take a couple hours.
86 books, I think you said, right?
I'm told, I haven't counted them. I'm told that I've written over 80 books. 80 books.
Is that author and co-author or just author?
There's a handful that are co-authored, a handful of them. But by and large, authored, yeah, by and large. I'm an author. I love being an author. I certainly do a lot of other things, but author is what I think I was born to do, and it's what I have the most fun doing. And if you look at the evidence of what I love behind me, I love books. So it's in my field of genius, if you will, or at least field of passion. So I've written 80 some books. The first one was 1984, but it was 10 years before the next one came out. 10 long years. Now those 10 years slightly got better because I was now being a marketing consultant, now being hired to write copy, but I didn't even know how to price myself. So I was pricing myself with poverty thinking. So I didn't charge what a regular copywriter would charge. A regular copywriter today, even back then, would have charged thousands of dollars to write a sales letter. I was probably charging $300 because $300 felt like a hell of a lot of money to me. And it was matching the self-esteem I had at the time. So it took 10 years for the next book to come out. But at that point, when they started to come out, they came out a little faster. I wrote one of the first books on internet marketing around 1995. It was cyber writing. And cyber writing came out when the world is like, what is this thing called the internet? And there's whispers that there's gold in something called cyberspace, and everybody's getting excited about it. And I'm like, I'm not so sure anybody can make any money on it. And then there was the concept of flaming. The word flaming back then was hate mail. Those were the critics. Those were the guys and gals that were tearing you apart and putting you down because they can say things behind the safety of their screen that they would never say to anybody in person. And we called it flaming. And so my book was Cyber Writing: How to Promote Your Product or Service Online Without Being Flamed. And I greatly loved writing that book. That led to another book deal, the AMA Complete Guide to Small Business Advertising. That was for the American Marketing Association. And in alignment with these books coming out, finally, the audio company that I had bought all their cassettes and sometimes stole some of their cassettes so I can listen to self-help material when I was broke, Nightingale Conant finally hired me for my first program with them. And I think that was 1998. It was another turning point because it was called The Power of Outrageous Marketing. The Power of Outrageous Marketing. That brought my copywriting skills, my publicity skills, my marketing skills, everything I had learned, all the stories I had acquired at that time, everything that I had built up in my career, which seems funny to say at this point, decades later in a new century. But by 1998, it felt like, man, I'm doing something great here. I got books coming out. I'm being hired. Nightingale Conant is finally hiring me to do an audio program. I'm going to be one of those authors like Zig Ziglar and Dennis Waitley and all the other ones that are there. And it did come out, and it was a huge success. And that was 98.
Wow. So folks, what we're hearing here is the evolution of Joe Vitale and an evolution of an entrepreneur. It's not easy. There's a bumpy road. There's time that it seems like it's, are you okay, Joe?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. It seems like you're not going to do it. You're not going to make it. But as the Sharon Lechter book, 3 Feet from Gold with Napoleon Hill, the title of Napoleon Hill's book, 3 Feet from Gold, you're almost there. Don't quit. Like, you just got to keep going sometimes. And Joe did. So go ahead, Joe.
Well, I was on a radio show fairly recently, and this is relevant. And they said, Joe, out of all the books you've written and all the books you've read and all the things you've tried and all the things you've seen other people do, and out of your entire career, what is the one thing that always works? What is the one thing that always works? And I was in my hot seat going, one thing, there's lots of things that work. Why does he want only one thing? And I thought about it, and I thought, oh yeah, there is one thing. And this one thing beats luck. It beats money. It beats creativity. It beats partners or leverage or connections or networking. It beats all of it. And that one thing is persistence. Persistence. I mentioned that Nightingale Conant picked me up in 98. What I didn't tell you is I tried to be in that company for 10 years.
Wow.
10 years. I had books that I just felt in my gut were Nightingale Conant products. I said, if they only would give me a minute and just take a look at these books I'm writing, and I would send letters to them, again, before the internet. I'd get rejections from them. And I would keep trying for 10 years, 10 years. And it wasn't until 98. And I think it's worth mentioning because so many of us ram through the front door thinking that's the only way to get a company's attention, that we forget there's certain magic that can take place when you let go. And so I tried for 10 years and kept hearing no. And during that 10 years, I'm still working. I'm still writing books. I'm still being a copywriter. I'm still learning. I also wrote a book on P.T. Barnum that came out in 98. It was, There's a Customer Born Every Minute. I'm very proud of that book. There's a customer born every minute. And there was a young man in Chicago who read the book and started writing to me. He was emailing me at that point. And he was asking me questions about Barnum and Barnum like marketing and how Barnum did publicity and this, that, and the other. And I enjoyed answering. So I just answered the questions. And then one day I got the email from him that changed my life. He said, thank you so much for answering all of my questions about P.T. Barnum. He said, by the way, I'm the vice president of marketing at Nightingale Conant. If you would ever like to have any of your products considered by Nightingale, let me know. I got chills even right now. Thinking, what? What? And of course, we developed a relationship, we developed a friendship. I sent him my material, and it was because of him that my first program was brought into Nightingale Conant in 98. And so you often don't know how all of the persistent efforts you take work out, but you have to take them. You have to be persistent. You have to believe in yourself, and you have to keep marching forward, because at some point, there's an opening. There's some sort of blessing. So speaking of blessings, along the same time, I had written a little book that I never intended to publish. It was called Spiritual Marketing. And spiritual marketing I wrote from my sister. She was, at that point, she was on welfare. She was raising 3 kids. She was deeply struggling, and she was 2,000 miles away. I was in Texas. She was in Ohio. And I was tasting success through a blend of marketing and metaphysics, if you will. And I thought, she needs to know some of what I know. I mean, I got out of homelessness. I got out of poverty. I'm starting to climb the ladder of success. So I wrote this little booklet called Spiritual Marketing, and I gave it to her. It was a pamphlet at the time. I printed it out and stapled it and gave it to her. She read it, she applied it, she got off welfare, she ended up raising her kids. And I thought, well, maybe there's something to spiritual marketing. And every now and then I would hand it to somebody as a gift. If I just felt intuitively right at that point, I'd do it. And one day, Bob Proctor, who's also in the movie The Secret, he was teaching a seminar in Denver called The Science of Getting Rich. And he invited me to it as his guest. So I went there, and I thought, well, I should give him something. And I gave him a copy of Spiritual Marketing, a little pamphlet that's not published. And he read it. He loved it. He stood on stage and embarrassed me in front of everybody. There was 300 people there. And he said, Dr. Joe Vitale is in the room, and he has a new book, and you're all going to want it. It's called Spiritual Marketing. And I gasped. I thought, I wasn't going to release this book. I thought too many people would judge me as being too spiritual when I'm coming out as a marketer. And I thought, this is not good. 300 people rushed me, all wanting the book. And there was a publisher who was running what was then new, a print-on-demand publishing company. And print-on-demand is when you're running pretty much a publishing bakery. Somebody orders a book, it is printed for them. It's not in a warehouse, it's printed that day and shipped. And as far as the person getting the book is concerned, it's part of a run. But it wasn't. It was one book. So this was a print-on-demand publisher. He wanted to print Spiritual Marketing. And I said, man, I've just been giving it away. I even gave it away online just because I thought maybe it'll help somebody. And he said, well, let's try it. Well, book became a #1 bestseller on Amazon without me trying, word of mouth. New York Times contacted me. They were doing an article on print-on-demand books. It heard of mine and wanted to do an article on it, which increased sales. And then a large publisher in New Jersey, J. Wiley, same company that published Herman Melville's Moby Dick in the 1800s, contacted me and said, we want your book, Spiritual Marketing, but we don't like the title.
Wow.
So I was in a mastermind. We created a new title. The title was The Attractor Factor. The Attractor Factor tied into the law of attraction and things and concepts that were in the book, and released it. It became a bestseller. And this time I did do a lot of work behind it. The latest Harry Potter book was coming out, a book by the Pope John, I think at the time, was coming out, and I wanted to beat them both. And I thought, how am I going to beat the Pope and Harry Potter? Well, I had learned publicity. I had learned marketing. I was a disciple of P.T. Barnum. And I sent out news releases saying, underdog, solitary Texas author goes up against the Harry Potter empire and the Vatican Empire. And news releases were being printed and distributed to tell my story. They thought it was funny. They thought it was different. They thought it was David versus Goliath kind of thing. And the Attractor Factor beat Harry Potter and beat the Pope.
That's incredible.
Story doesn't end there, because then I get a phone call from a woman in Australia who says, I read your book, The Attractor Factor. I'm making a movie about the law of attraction, and I would like you to be in it. And I'm like, I've been on television, because I had been on for P.T. Barnum, but I hadn't been in a movie. And I just had learned to say yes, which is another lesson and takeaway. Say yes, even when you don't know, say yes. So I said, yes. I said, sure, if you pull it together and you want me to be in your whatever this is movie, okay. And obviously she did call back, and that movie was The Secret. And The Secret blew me into outer space. They know me on Mars now because of the movie The Secret. I am still going around the world. My material and everything is still being shared around the world, all because The Secret is still going around the world. And for whatever reason, I appear to be one of the 5 or 6 that stand out in the movie. There's 24 teachers in it, but 5 or 6 seem to be memorable, like Jack Canfield and Bob Proctor and John Assaraf and Lisa Nichols and apparently myself. So, well, I'll pause, but that brings you around the corner quite a bit.
Yeah, no, actually, Dr. Joe, I'd like to get your opinion, because Dennis Waitley was on here too, as I was mentioning earlier,
Yes.
and we talked about The Secret. And one of the things that he said that bothers him, if you listen to the video, it's pretty funny. He's like, I'm really tired of going to other countries and signing that book for the Secret. I want to sign my own book, so. Does that get annoying after a while? Because now that The Secret did make a lot of people like take the next level to a quantum leap. So
yeah, no, never. I am glad to be known for being in the movie The Secret. I would recommend that movie whether I was in it or not. I think it was a great movie. It was a movie that made history. I think the marketing behind the movie is probably even worth knowing and more important than the movie itself. But for a whole lot of people who don't read books, who are sitting in front of their TV, who don't know anything about empowerment or setting goals, I think the movie is a lifesaver.
Yeah, and talk about marketing. From my understanding, it was the trailer that really hooked all those major speakers to get in here in the first place, right? Her creativity, Rhonda, was getting that trailer properly done in order to send it out to all you guys. Is that right?
That trailer is what won the world.
Yeah.
The trailer is what I first saw, because when I talked to Rhonda on the phone, I didn't know her. Right. And a lot of people at that point would call me because I was answering my phone at that time. And they just sounded like they had big dreams, but no follow through. And I figured she's not going to follow through either. And she said, I'm going to send you the trailer. And it was the trailer. When I saw that trailer, I thought, if this movie is anywhere near as good as this trailer, this movie is going to tear down walls. And so I said yes, based on the trailer. It was the same trailer that she used to promote the movie before the movie was done. So she spent 6 months telling the world The Secret was going to be revealed. And what she used to get people excited was that trailer. She did make a couple other trailers that had the same kind of dramatic and theatrical and curiosity-provoking emotional appeal. But it was that first trailer, you're right, when all the speakers saw it, including me, we were all like, yeah, we went in. I was so sold on the movie, and I like telling this story, that I wrote the email to promote the movie 6 months before the movie was done. And every day I looked to see if she said, it's okay to tell the world now, Joe, because my finger was right over the send button. My email was ready. And when 6 months later, she said, the movie is done, you can tell the world, I just went, send. And I was the first to tell the planet about it. And I'm boyishly, giddishly proud of that moment, because I knew that movie was got to make a difference. She did all the marketing right. She put together the movie right. And it was the right timing. It hit people and caused enough of a controversy and enough of cheerleading to make it work. It didn't hurt that Larry King did 3 shows on it. Oprah did 2 or 3 shows on it, and they were pretty much infomercials for the movie. I mean, this movie was just capturing the gold everywhere you looked. So I'm proud to be in it. I have no complaints about anybody asking me to sign a book called The Secret.
So Joe, if you had to make that movie, and we're going to talk about The Secret in a little bit, but just real quick, if you had to make that movie, being a marketing genius, like you would have done it probably the same way she did it, right? Like knowing what you know now, get that trailer right, make it 100%.
Well, from a marketing standpoint, yes, I would have done everything that she did marketing wise. In fact, she was better at her marketing than I would have been. I'm Mr. Impatient. She waited 6 months to promote the movie. As soon as they told me the movie was done, I would have promoted it. I wouldn't have waited 6 months to drum up. But she did it right. I would have done it wrong because of my impatience. Now, if your question is about the movie itself, I do think the movie has a weak link in it. And it's gotten a lot of criticism since it came out, which was around 2006, for not talking enough about taking action. And I'm a big take action guy. I'm actually the guy in the movie who leans forward, looks at the camera and says, you must take action. It's your job. But I'm about the only person saying it. Mm-hmm. The rest of the movie is feel good, sit, dream, close your eyes, think about a bicycle or car, a doorbell rings, there's the love of your life, or there's the bike, or there's the car. And that's way oversimplifying things. So if it came to me doing a version of the movie, I would have expanded a little bit on the, you got something to do part. You have a little bit of action to take, because manifesting anything is a co-creation. It's not just you, and it's not just what we'll call the universe. It's the dance of energies between both of you. That's what I would do different.
Thank you, Dr. Joe. We'll take 2 more questions, maybe, if that's okay with you, and then we'll take a pause.
Okay.
That works. Okay. So while we're on The Secret, you know, how does it feel to be a part of that movie, though? Like, what is your feeling that, you know, you're actually involved with what could have been classified easily as the greatest self-help movie out there?
I'm beyond proud and beyond grateful. I did not realize at the time that she had purposely reached out to get me to be in the movie. What I found out later is that almost all of the people in the movie were filmed in Denver when the Transformational Leadership Council had a meeting in Denver. And so all the self-help people that were notable were all in one place. And Rhonda went to that one place and filmed all of them. And then she used, by her own process of selection, whoever she wanted. There were only 2 or 3 people in the movie who were not there in Denver, and she had to reach out to them, and I was one of them. When I found that out, I was incredibly flattered. I'm a member of the Transformational Leadership Council now, but I wasn't then, and I wasn't in Denver then. So she had to reach out to me. She had to call me, and she was going to film me and 2 other people in Chicago, and she flew me to Chicago. So when I learned that she went the extra mile to get me, it was beyond, I mean, I was almost speechless. I was so flattered. But to be in the movie, I am so grateful. As I said earlier, I'd recommend and market the movie whether I was in it or not. Being in it, geez, I'm a lucky guy.
Thank you, Dr. Joe. All right. So let's talk about, you were homeless for a little bit. I want to go back to that. How does it feel to have been homeless? It's not a great feeling. It's definitely, I'm definitely one that believes that struggles make you better. How does it feel? What has that experience done for making you the Dr. Joe Vitale of today?
For the longest time, I never talked about it. It was too embarrassing. It was too traumatic. It was too sad to even consider. It was Mark Joyner, another internet marketer, who had interviewed me, I don't know, a couple decades ago at this point, and he really pulled that story out. And as he pointed out, I had to tell it to inspire other people, because they were looking at me and going, look at this guy, he's got cars and guitars and books and, you know, houses and this, that, and the other. And I just figured, like, it's easy street. You know, I was born with the silver spoon or golden spoon, or I had connections or some sort of lottery win. And they just made up stories about me, and they didn't know the truth. And Mark had thought, rightly so, that they needed to know I'm just like them. I struggled, and maybe in some ways struggled more than they did. So I had to own the story. And the first few times I told it, it was no party. That was not fun to talk about, not fun to remember. And then there was a movie crew at one point that met me in Dallas at the Dallas Public Library, which is where I was sleeping, and filmed me as I went back for the first time after decades. And I was in tears. I was nearly speechless. It was like, Jesus, this is just an awful experience, humiliating, uncomfortable. And then I was with Melissa Etheridge, who's a rock and roll legend, and I've been a fan of hers for 20 years. And as it worked out, I was in her home, in her studio. She was helping me with some music that I was creating, and I wrote a song for her. And she asked about my story, and I told her about homelessness. And she said, yeah, but that homelessness helped make you who you are today. It made you hungry. It made you want more. It made you want to go in that direction of what you wanted to create, to go in the direction of pleasure and away from pain, to speak in psychological terms. So I would say at this point, I own it as part of my story, not the proudest part of it, but I would say at the same time, I was homeless for positive reasons. I wasn't doing drugs. I wasn't drinking. I wasn't doing some sort of aborted behavior. I was following a dream. And a lot of things weren't working out for me at the time. And we didn't have the internet to go look up, what do you do if this happens? Or where do you go if you don't have a home? And there weren't the resources and recourses that you might turn to. And given all of that, the fact that I stayed in a public library and I spent my days reading is highly commendable. It's like, even homeless, I'm using my time to improve myself. So when I look at all of that, it's like there's lessons here for other people.
How long were you homeless for?
Not very long, but as it was probably a month and a half, something like that. But as I told at least one person, I said, being homeless for one day.
Yeah.
Often people would say, what kind of car did you sleep in? It's like, a car. A car would have been great. There is no car.
Where were you sleeping? The library?
The library, and in bus stations and in church pews. All of them, you can find people sleeping in those places even today. The library I liked because this was Dallas. It was hot and it was air conditioned and the bathrooms were clean and they had water, and more importantly, they had books. Bus stations are dangerous, not necessarily clean. They're wide open to any riffraff, some of which are getting a bus and some of which are trying to get your money or something from you. And the church pews, I slept in church pews. The church pews were not comfortable, put it that way.
Thank you, Dr. Joe. I share a part of your story with you. I was homeless different parts of my life too, for different stints in Europe for positive reasons. I had a dream. I wanted to just travel around Europe. I bought a Euro pass, cut Christmas trees the whole winter just to save that $1,000. And then I ran out of money while I was there, and there was a war in Serbia at the time. I remember one night I was stuck in a train station with a bunch of Serbian refugees. I'm sitting outside of a train station, sleeping on my backpack. And, so many times like that, sleeping in the train, sleeping on the bus. One guy in Norway brought me into his house and fed me. He felt bad for me. I was 20 years old at the time, sitting there, But one thing that it taught me, and I'm sure that we can instantly relate on this, is that humanity is actually very kind. They talk about the bad side, but one thing I learned from that experience was, geez, these strangers took me in. They had nothing to gain. They took me in, they fed me. They gave me, how many people gave me their place to stay? I had nothing. And it was incredible to see humanity at its best. So I don't know if that was something that resonates with you.
Absolutely. And in fact, I can quickly say on Netflix, there's a show called The Kindness Diaries. And it's a man who travels around the world living on the kindness of strangers. If people don't offer him food or a place to stay, he doesn't eat. He doesn't have a place over his head to rest.
Wow.
And the whole movie is about this, because as he goes as a complete stranger, nobody knows about the show or his name, they open their hearts. And it's a movie it's a TV series on Netflix that'll move you to tears to see, as you pointed out, there is a kindness in people that if you listen to the mainstream news, you think it doesn't exist, but there is a kindness in people. People do want to help.
Thank you, Dr. Joe. All right. So Dr. Joe, as promised, we're going to take a pause. So folks, there was a little bit of a technical glitch earlier, and also my car got robbed this morning. So I apologize for Dr. Joe for waiting about 20 minutes. Living here in the great city of Philadelphia, always got some wonderful experiences, but we're going to pause and then we're going to come back. So Dr. Joe, got about 20 questions, maybe about 2 minutes each, and that should give us a good wrap up for the interview, if that's okay with you.
I'm ready for round two.
Okay. All right, folks. All right, folks, welcome back. This moment, we had paused it, but Dr. Joe, you mind telling us your website name so we can solicit that for a moment?
I have a couple hundred websites. I think the one to give people is vitalelifemastery.com, Vitale, my last name, vitalelifemastery.com. I think it's a portal to pretty much everything.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Joe. All right. So we're going to continue with our interview of Dr. Joe Vitale here, folks. Amazing member of The Secret, as well as a master marketer and so many other amazing accolades. We're going to move into The Secret a little bit, but we're going to hit it from a different angle. What relationship does the movie The Secret have with Napoleon Hill's hidden secret from Think and Grow Rich? Now, let me just preface that question. So when you read Think and Grow Rich, he never really completely says what the secret is. From my understanding, he never mentioned it at all until later on in life. One of his last books, he actually clarifies that it's about believing. You believe it and you can do it. But he didn't say it specifically. He danced around it the whole book. But what is the secret from Rhonda Burns? What does that have anything to do, if at all, with Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill's version of what the secret is?
Well, Napoleon Hill did write about the law of attraction. I have, especially right on the back behind me there, an entire collection of everything Napoleon Hill wrote, including signed copies of Think and Grow Rich. He also, his first book was The Law of Success, which was 1925. I wouldn't read the 1925 version because he was just starting out. He tried to put everything into that book, and it's almost unreadable. But he rewrote it, and in 1928, he came out with Law of Success, which has Law of Attraction in it. He talks about some big concepts, some of which I think are the be-all and end-all. He talks about persistence, which I already said earlier, which is the number one thing that always works. And he talks about masterminds, which I think is one of the most priceless things any of us could put together or be in. Think and Grow Rich, which came out in the mid-1930s, is more of an abbreviated version of Law of Success. Some would say that it's a sales letter for Law of Success. Now, Napoleon Hill started 2 autobiographies. He didn't finish either one of them, but the Napoleon Hill Foundation got both copies of them, did some editing, put those books both together, and you can find it on Amazon now. I think it's called Mastermind, The Memoirs of Napoleon Hill. And in it, he tells the story of how he wrote Think and Grow Rich. He was with his wife at the time, and I say at the time because he went through several wives, and he didn't keep this one either. But his wife and he had seen that a book had become a bestseller, and they both agreed the book was atrocious. They thought the book was terrible. And his wife said, that book that you've been writing and putting aside called Think and Grow Rich was, at the time, it was called Make Money from Your Noodle While You Sleep, or something ridiculous like that. It didn't have the Think and Grow Rich title during those early stages. Anyway, she kind of urged him, and Napoleon Hill also got mad, and together they worked on that manuscript. Some say she wrote it. She certainly typed it, and she certainly added to it. But that book refers to the hidden secret, which for those Napoleon Hill junkies that are on the inside circle, which include me, he's referring to the law of attraction. The phrase law of attraction has been around since the 1800s. It was first in a book by William Walker Atkinson, which I think was 1906. So Rhonda Byrne wasn't the first, and Napoleon Hill wasn't the first, but law of attraction had already been around. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what they were referring to.
So the secret still, so you're saying the secret really is the law of attraction? That's the secret, or is
yes.
it the belief part?
Oh, no, it's law of attraction.
The law of attraction.
Yes.
Okay. We're gonna talk about actually the law of attractions next, but before we get to that, so how important, just to finish up this question, how important is, I guess, another interpretation of the secret, which is built into the law of attraction, about believing? Like, is that also extremely important part of the secret as well? Believing in yourself?
Well, belief is where you activate the attraction. You're going to attract what you believe. They're working together. You can almost say they're the very same thing.
Okay.
I'm the guy, I've written lots of books on the power of belief in one form or another. And I'm the guy who says you get what you believe. Change your beliefs and you get a different result. We live in a belief created universe. Change your beliefs and you get a different universe. So what you attract into your life is basically what you believe about your life. Now, obviously, I'm giving you very soundbite, simplistic answers.
Yeah.
And that's also one of the problems with The Secret. It's like, it's just a movie, for God's sake. It just introduces an idea.
Take it
it's
too
not
literal.
a graduate course. It just says, hey, there's a secret. It's the law of attraction. And then it expands on it. But it doesn't tell you the deeper layers that you need to know, and which is, something you and I can talk about for hours to days.
Yeah. Well, speaking, that's the next question, actually. So what is the law of attraction, or at least your version of that? Because I know there's different interpretations of this. This can really get into a deep subject. But
the law of attraction is the basic principle that you tend to pull into your life what you unconsciously believe and expect. Now, the word unconscious is important because a lot of people go, hey, I've been sitting around thinking about money, but I don't have any money. Well, what do you unconsciously believe about money? And this is an important thing. I told you I wrote a book called Money Loves Speed, wrote another book called The Awakened Millionaire. I've written lots of books like Attract Money Now. And in all these books, I hammer home that there's an operating belief in virtually everybody watching this. And in every country I've been to around the world, they have this operating belief. And this operating belief is money is the root of all. Everybody just
I got a lesson in my second book that completely dismisses that. It's not the root of all evil.
And that's exactly right. So you and I are on the same page.
Oh, yeah.
However, most people, the vast masses of people, have that in their unconscious mind.
Right.
So when they consciously say, oh, I want to attract more money, and then they go, where's the money? They have to look unconsciously and go, well, if you think money's evil, are you really going to want it? Aren't you going to push it away? Aren't you going to sabotage it? Aren't you going to say nothing I work, including Napoleon Hill stuff, none of this stuff, The Secret, everything, none of it works. But underneath, it's actually working because you're getting a match to what you believe. You believe money's bad, and so you push it away. When you read your book, for example, or one of mine, and we blow the whistle on that belief and find out money's not evil. Money's nothing bad at all. In fact, you can fulfill your dreams with money. It's a wonderful tool. Gandhi used it. Mother Teresa used it. The Pope used it. I mean, Jesus, it goes on forever. It's a great tool for us to have, but we need to clear our beliefs. So the law of attraction is working on our subconscious / unconscious beliefs. That's the essence of what people need to know.
And Dr. Joe, we have a lot of mindset people that will somehow have been attracting to me lately, even though I'm a finance guy. I guess through Clubhouse, I've somehow jumped into this mindset space that was completely new to me. I knew Think and Grow Rich for years, but he dances in two circles. He dances in the realm that I was used to, the academic version of finance, but then this mindset path that went a different way. So for those mindset people, and for everybody really, what is the history of the law of attraction? Because I know you're an expert on this subject. So, well, can you give us a quick debriefing?
Well, the term itself was used by William Walker Atkinson in 1906 with his thought power, or the law of attraction. I forget the exact title, but it depends on how you define it, because you can go back, and Buddha thousands of years ago was saying thoughts become things, and what you think about, you bring about. This has a long history without using the phrase law of attraction, but acknowledging that your thoughts are influencing reality. Most recently, because of some horrendous things I went through over the last few years, I turned to Stoicism to help me get through the day. And you have people like Seneca, one of the early Stoics, one of the greatest, with his letters and other things he wrote, saying that everything hangs on your thinking. That's an exact quote. Everything hangs on your thinking. That's pure law of attraction. But he didn't have the phrase law of attraction, and we probably didn't have the phrase law of attraction until 1906 with William Walker Atkinson.
William Walker Atkinson, he's the one that actually most likely invented that term, right?
Yes, invented it and used it and put it on a book title.
Okay. And Dr. Joe, just real quick, wanted to pause So my second book called The Most Important Lessons in Economics and Finance. I got 218 principles. Principle 135, folks. Money is not the root of all evil and good. Look at the bold. The real root of most evil and good is the economic or financial entities that control the money. It's the people.
Right.
It's up to them to either make good or to make evil, using money as the tool, as you mentioned.
George Bernard Shaw, the great playwright, said, "The lack of money is the root of all evil."
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective on it. I tell you what, though, a lot of people like myself who grew up in poverty, I'm sure yourself, we actually, I think that poverty has taught us a lot of lessons about how to be better, how to be a better person, by not doing certain things, because we got to get the full experience of poverty and those who've made it past the wealth line where you've attracted more wealth. You got to see the full spectrum of, and the only way to do that really is to go from start to finish. If you're a rich person, and I don't want to get too deep in this, but if you're a rich person and you're born rich and you stay rich and you never got to experience poverty, it's a whole range of experiences that could have helped teach you about life. So I always say, try poverty, even if you're rich. Just try it.
I think some of the Stoics would agree, because they tell you to take a few days every week and go sleep in the slums, just to remind yourself of it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Joe. All right. So going back to the law of attraction, what other mindset laws are out there? So you got this law of attraction, but like, is there other laws that are comparable that need to be incorporated into this subject to give us a full range of understanding of the law of attraction?
I would say the biggest one is the law of right action. The law of right action. I came out with a lot of programs for Nightingale Conant. I mentioned that it was a big deal when in 1998, The Power of Outrageous Marketing was released by them. But I released The Missing Secret, The Secret of Attracting Money, 0 Point. I can't even remember all the different programs I released during that time. And one of them was about the law of right action. The law of right action was the supplement to the law of attraction. And this also helps fill in the gap that The Secret left. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of people watched The Secret and thought, well, I just visualize and sit in my chair and click my heels together and everything happens. You do that, but at some point you have to get out of the chair. What I've said when I tell people, look, I've written 80 some books, but if I just sat and visualized books, I would have none. I have to visualize, I have to feel it real, and then I have to go over to the computer, in the early days, the typewriter, and start punching the keys. It's the same thing with music. I'm a musician. For the longest time, I just dreamed about it. But as long as I dreamed about it, I was never in the studio and I never had a song recorded. Now I have, I think, 15 albums and maybe even 17 albums that are recorded because I took action. I think that is part, it may be the missing secret, the law of attraction being a secret, the law of right action being the supplement to that secret that actually helps you get the results. So that's really something that's overlooked. I think it's Jack Canfield that points out in the phrase law of attraction, the word action is in attraction. So there's a bit of a hint that you need to take some action to get some of the results you want.
Yeah, that's a good point. And to paraphrase Don Green, he was on the podcast in the earlier parts of when I first was getting this started. He said, think and grow rich. I mean, just look at the title itself, right? If he meant just think and that alone would do it, it would just be called think. Like it's think and grow rich. The grow rich part indicates action. So you have, in order to grow rich, you got to do something. So, and that goes right in line with what you're saying. You got to act. Like you can't just sit still. Something has to come from here to the physical world at some point.
Yeah, life is a co-creation. You got something to do. Bring your dream into being.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Joe. And here's a question that I often get in Clubhouse, because they talk a lot about, and I've heard this expression before. So law of attraction, how does it apply to people. Now, let me preface this. So the law of attraction, like there's at every moment, are you constantly, this is a debate that goes, but you're constantly attracting and repelling people at the same moment. So everything you say, every event, every moment of your life, the things that you do, every single action is either bringing someone into your life or repelling them, no matter how subtle it is. At some point, is that true? Like, would you agree with that?
Not entirely. I would say we're talking more of an essence, because I remember, I think it was the first time I was in Russia, and somebody came to one of my talks and he was really troubled. He says, I really want to believe. He says, but I keep hearing about some people making strong cases that the law of attraction doesn't work, and other people making strong cases that it does work. And he says, I'm being torn. And I pointed out, I said, do you realize that those people that don't believe the law of attraction work have all attracted each other? They're all in a group. They're all like-minded. Have you wondered why? And those people who are supporting the law of attraction are also in a group. They're all like-minded. They all seem to have the same beliefs. Have you wondered why? And so we are on a mass level grouping, and we're grouping based on our unconscious beliefs. Now, this is a bigger subject than was ever touched by the movie The Secret. In fact, Rhonda Byrne probably knows about it, but she never made any movies or clips or writings that I'm aware of to explain this. This is a very important thing. When we are personally believing in something, we tend to attract people that believe with it or believe directly against it. And both of them are stemming from our unconscious beliefs. When I explained it to the guy in Russia, he started nodding like he got it. He got it. It's like, from his perspective, he can see both camps. There's the non-believers, they're believers. And even the non-believers attracted themselves to the other non-believers using the very thing they didn't believe in, the law of attraction. So we are doing this, but I don't know that I would agree that it's every single blink of the eye that is doing the attraction. I think it's more of an energetic composition. It's more along the lines of the word being. It's how you're being that is attracting or repelling the like-minded or the unlike-minded.
And I guess, after I was reflecting on this, I guess last week, I think I asked Rex Sykes a similar question. He was the interviewee before you, and we went on. It was actually 3 hours. He broke the record. Very, very. I don't know. Do you know Rex Sykes? He's really.
I've known him since the 90s. Yeah.
Really? Yeah. He's really good. He's really knowledgeable. And I started thinking about it. I'm like, well, maybe there's a third group. Like, I was under the belief that maybe that was right, but then as I thought about it, I'm like, there could be this neutral category too. You're attracting, you're repelling, or you're in a state of neutrality where I'm neutral. I'm not persuaded either way. Like, right. I'm not attracting to you, I'm not repelling you, but I'm still here.
Right. Yes, so, exactly. And there will be people who agree with that, and you will attract them.
The neutral people.
The neutral people. Right. It sounds like another planet, but yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Joe. That's a great discussion to have. I would love to get a room on that one. All right. So in every moment, we are constant. Oh, wait, I think I asked you that already. Well, what was I doing? Okay. So I combined two questions. I guess we got two birds with one stone. All right. So what is your favorite song? Moving on to something else. And can you sing it? I see a guitar behind you.
Yeah, guitars all around me. I got a studio with guitars. What is my favorite song? Boy, that comes out of left field. It's interesting that you would ask that, because I'm on an open mic tonight that's online. The open mic is about bringing positivity to the world, and people will bring poems or songs or chants or whatever they're inspired to bring. And as I was thinking about it before you and I started doing the interview, I was remembering the song, Keep on the Sunny Side of Life. And I always loved the song. I actually recorded it. It's on one of my albums. And it was written, I think, in 1890 or 1899. And it was a Christian hymn. And the person who wrote it for her, I think it was her brother, who was in a wheelchair. And he always wanted to be wheeled on the sunny side of the street so he can feel the sunshine. And the song is always about, I got chills thinking about it. It's all about keeping on the sunny side of life, that we have a choice, but if we keep on the sunny side of life, we're not going to see or be as influenced by the darkness or anything that could taint us. And I think there's so many songs I love, and so many songs after this, I'll go, why didn't I tell him that song? Why didn't I tell him this song? I'll be thinking of all kinds of songs, but based on the moment and what I was doing earlier and what I'm doing tonight, and it's a great message anyway, keep on the sunny side of life. My partner, Lisa Winston, and I watched the old movie Pollyanna last night. And Pollyanna is a 1913 book that's all about playing the glad game. And I've always thought it was the greatest self-improvement book of all time, even though it's not billed as that, it's a children's book. But the glad game is all about finding the positive in any person or any situation at any time. And I did research about the author, Eleanor Porter, and she said, Pollyanna isn't about dismissing reality. Pollyanna is about seeing reality and looking for the good in it. And I went, oh, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. So many of us get sucked into the dark side of life or looked into anything that's negative or could potentially be negative. And that's all there. That's all potential. But what about looking for the sun? What about being on the sunny side of the street? What about playing the glad game? What about finding the positive? What we find out, and this is straight from the law of attraction, whatever you focus on, you amplify. This goes back to William James in his 2-volume set of psychology books in the 1800s. What you focus on expands. That's law of attraction. So I would say the song I'm going to nominate is Keep on the Sunny Side of Life. And no, I can't sing it to you. But thanks.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. So Dr. Joe, you also, as you were saying, you have 15 albums or something like that, right? Now that's incredible, because there aren't, not that I know, not too many people in this space that also are singers. Christine Kane was on here. John David Mann had introduced me to her. She's a singer, and she does also some of the coaching aspects. But you're definitely on the extreme level that you have 15 albums. And I was actually listening to it past week, just in my car and stuff, and I'm like, wow, the message is so spot on, so perfect. You're like you are the movies, the singer star of this industry. Like they can use your albums to especially on Clubhouse. I think that would be awesome. Would you like to share or sing maybe a minute, just one of your favorite songs that you wrote for the audience, or if you don't have the capability?
Thank you so much for your kind words. I am a insecure musician. My band is, I call them the Band of Legends. They are famous. My drummer has the same name as me. He's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He's the drummer for Neil Young and Joe Walsh and all the greats from the 70s till today. He's still drumming, and he's my drummer. And my bass player is the bass player for Robert Plant of Led Zeppelin.
What?
And the
I didn't know this.
Yes. And my producer and lead singer is the award-winning lead singer for the band Porter Davis, which is great. And then there's me. I mean, I'm the greenie guy. I'm barely out of the diapers when it comes to being a musician, but I've smartly, I think, attracted around me legends, the pros. And so I feel insecure when I start thinking about, I'll do this on my own without my backup, without my band. But I will tell you, when I decided that I wanted to be a musician, this is a marketing lesson. I decided I wanted to record my own music. I did purposely decide I wanted them to be self-help oriented. That was me. It seemed like an extension of me. And so I wanted the music to be positive. But I also knew there were 3,000 new albums every week. 3,000 every week. How am I going to stand out? How will any new musician stand out? So I had to think like a marketer or P.T. Barnum. And I thought, well, I'm going to build myself as the world's first self-help singer-songwriter. And I ended up in Rolling Stone magazine, I think in 2012, with that moniker, the world's first self-help singer-songwriter. As it turns out, there's lots of them out there. They just don't call themselves self-help singer-songwriters. And so the first to marketplace usually gets to wear the tagline. So all of my music, while being experimental, is with the thrust of inspiring people to go for their own dreams. Even when I finally did perform live with my band of legends, and I told the audience, I said, this is my first time to be on stage as a singer-songwriter. I was sweating bullets.
How long ago was that, Joe?
At this point, 5 years ago, something like that, all before the pandemic and this, that, and the other. And I told people on stage, I said, I'm doing this to tell you, you can do whatever you want to. You have to face your fears. You have to take action. You have to be persistent. Yes, there'll be some bumps in the road, days when you want to give up. But as long as you keep moving forward and don't give up, you can be on stage or whatever that version is for you. That's what I've tried to do in my life. And I think that's what my life mission is, to inspire people to go for their dreams, inspire them through my books, inspire them through music, inspire them through speaking engagements, inspire them through the movies, inspire them in whatever way, hopefully, I'm doing now. That's what it's all about.
So Dr. Joe, you're telling me that you just started singing on stage 5 years ago. Like, were you playing? I thought all this time you were strumming the guitar at 5 years old. Like, when did you start like learning all that stuff?
No. I wanted to play the guitar when I was a kid, but my father wanted me to play the accordion, so he bought me an accordion instead of a guitar. My
grandfather. I know all about the accordion.
Right. When I was 60 years old, which my birthday is going to be in a week, I'll be 68. So 8 years ago, when I was 60 years old, I looked around and said, what's on my bucket list? And I said, I've always wanted to be a musician. No music training, no music background, didn't sing in the shower, didn't sing behind the wheel of the car, didn't do karaoke, didn't have any experience writing songs. I had a couple of guitars. I knew 3 chords, and I knew musicians. And I did what I tell everybody to do. I stated an intention. I want to record music. I want to make an album on my 60th year. And I just started moving in that direction. Yes, there were fears. There were terrors. There was second guessing. Who am I to do this? What if I fail? What if I embarrass myself? What if nobody likes my voice? What if nobody likes my singing? What if nobody likes my songs? What if this is a complete bomb? What if this ends up being the embarrassment of my life? I mean, all of that just reared its devilish head. But at this point, at the age of 60, at that point, I realized I know enough tools when it comes to self-help to question my limitations and question my beliefs. And I did all of that. And as a result of doing all of that, I produced 15 albums in 7 years.
So you never sung on stage before you were 60 years old? You never like even picked up a microphone in a karaoke bar or anything?
No.
Joe, that is, Dr. Joe, that is incredible.
Well, thank you for realizing it, because it was. And I'm saying that because when I went on stage, or I got ready to go on stage, I said, look, I've been on stage for decades as a speaker.
Right.
To go on stage as a singer-songwriter is completely different. And it didn't help that I saw interviews like the actor Kevin Bacon has his own band. He's a singer-songwriter.
Yeah.
And he has openly said when he goes to get on stage, he's scared shitless. And I thought, this is Kevin Bacon.
Yeah.
And Kevin said, I can be on stage as an actor, much like I can be on stage as a speaker, but to be on stage as a singer-songwriter is completely different. One thing is, if I'm speaking and I need to cough or take a drink, I can do it. But if I'm singing, the song's going, man. The train has left the station. You don't get to stop. You got to keep going. So
how was that transition from, sorry to interrupt you, how was that transition from speaker to singer? Is it the same kind of nervousness, or?
No,
You
it's
had to
more.
restart it?
It's more nerve-wracking,
Wow.
partly because it's new. You know, I don't have decades of experience to do it, and partly because you do a lot more as a singer-songwriter. So first of all, I'm writing my own songs, singing my own songs, leading the band,
Wow.
playing guitar, staying in rhythm, and also entertaining the audience or having some sort of rapport with them before and after the song. And whatever else goes into all that kind of preparation. I mean, I took a master class with Usher. And when I took the master class, I didn't even know who Usher was. It turns out he's a freaking legend.
Yeah.
I didn't know it. I just know this guy's a performer. He's going to teach me how to perform. And the class was great. And one thing he said, which is worth everybody remembering, he said, you're going to practice, you're going to rehearse, you're going to memorize your songs, you're going to visualize your success, you're going to be fit, you're going to look good, you're going to do everything right. But on the night of the show, something's going to go wrong. And he said, as long as you know something's going to go wrong, when it goes wrong, you won't be stopped. You won't be devastated. You'll just kind of nod and go, oh, I knew something was going to happen. And you can keep going. And he told the story of one night he went to go perform, and the opening number, he broke 2 ribs. He still had a 2-hour show. Jeez. He broke 2 ribs and thought, well, I knew something would go wrong, and kept going. Same thing with me. We had some things that didn't work. I had to adjust and backpedal and adapt, but I also thought, wow, he said something would go wrong. Here it is. And because I expected it, it didn't devastate me. So there's all of that that goes into being a singer-songwriter. Being a speaker, I think, is far easier. And maybe that's because of the experience I have at this point, or maybe I'm just oversimplifying it. But I think a speaker just speaks. Singer-songwriter has a little bit more juggling to do.
Dr. Joe, I wonder if on Clubhouse one of these days, maybe not the first episode, but maybe if you come back, is it possible that we can get your whole band? And if they come, would you sing at that point?
Wow. I've learned to say yes.
Turn a party up with that for sure.
I've learned to say yes, even if I don't know how to do it or pull it all together. So yes.
You know, what I'm finding, because I'm in I explore a lot with the Clubhouse. They do have music rooms, which is really a cool part of it because it's an audio platform. And my friend owns a band, and he goes into those rooms, and like some of the famous singers, they're in there. And, you know, I think that's a really cool thing to listen to live music. So we got the mindset audience already built in, and you're the #1 mindset singer of all time. So
all right, let's make it happen.
All right, sounds good. Okay, so thank you, Dr. Joe. All right, moving on to the law of attraction. Okay, favorite song. What is the relationship between music and the law of attraction? Is there any? Maybe 1 or 2 minutes.
There is, because when I decided to be the world's first self-help singer-songwriter, one of the examples I gave was the Rolling Stones had written that famous song in the 1960s called "You Can't Always Get What You Want." And we love the song. We repeat the song. The song's in all kinds of movies, TV shows. Everybody knows that song. And I point out, how many times have you said, I can't always get what I want? That song programmed you. I'm not blaming the song. I love the song too. But we innocently get programmed by music. We get programmed by everything. I mean, watching the mainstream news and the negativity, we can start thinking in those terms. If we don't pay attention to what we're listening to, I can't always get what I want, or you can't always get what you want, ends up being an affirmation. It's programming. It ends up rewiring your brain. You listen to it from the 1960s, from the last century to this century, and they're still playing the song and still singing the song. And you end up looking around going, man, how come I can't always get what I want? Well, one reason is you've been programmed, and that programming is activating the law of attraction. As I said earlier, the law of attraction is the statement, the principle that you are matching your belief system in your reality. You're matching what you believe. So if you believe I can't always get what I want because the music told you that when you were young and impressionable in particular, then you can look around today and go, oh, that explains why I can't always get what I want. What I decided to do with music was to make it as catchy as the Rolling Stones, which is a big accomplishment, but make the words, the lyrics, positive affirmations, positive statements, things that would program us to get more of what we want. So for me, music, movies, media, all of it is law of attraction, because all of it can program you, and usually does, because we don't think about it. It's just kind of playing in the background, and we don't think, oh, that's programming me not to get what I want.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Dr. Joe. All right. And excuse me, what is the relationship between psychology and the science of mindset? Maybe a minute or so.
Yeah, it's all psychology. Psychology, mindset, that's all the same thing. It's another word for it. When I looked at the early psychologists, today we might worship Freud or Jung or Carl Rogers, but during their time when they were coming out, they had to fight to get their ideas and theories accepted because they were new. They were just like mind science. They were just like metaphysics. This is just like mumbo jumbo. And psychology was not worshiped or respected when it first came out. And a little known insight is that even Freud had a tough time getting his material and his ideas out there, except for the fact that his nephew was the greatest publicist of all time, Edward L. Bernays. Edward L. Bernays was considered to be the father of public relations. And one of his first clients was his uncle, Freud. If it wasn't for Bernays, we might not know Freud or his ideas today.
I didn't know that. Wow.
This is all mind science. This is all psychology. And depending on who you are and how critical you are, you can look at all of it and go, it's all just baloney. But for me, they're all belief systems.
And the reason I'm asking, I'm glad you brought up Freud, because I did study early psychology, and Freud I'm a big fan of. Me entering this mindset space really through Clubhouse earlier this year, I found it so interesting. And I always wondered, did they study all these psychology people? I know that, Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill, a lot of that stemmed, to Earl Nightingale, and you can look at the lineage and trace it to Bob Proctor, et cetera, and all their books. But before that, you had mentioned a couple names, but even before them, did they realize, Freud was doing this in the early, to mid 1800s. And how come they never mentioned Freud in any of these conversations? How come they never mentioned any of his predecessors from Austria or any of that stuff? Or talk about like all his crazy, insane things he did, like the Cocaine Papers, one of his books.
Right.
How come he's not brought up in the mindset space? I don't understand.
Part of it is that I'm going to say we don't agree with him. For Freud, the unconscious mind was a dark, scary place. This was looking in the closet or under the bed and finding monsters there. That is not the way the law of attraction crowd, the mind science crowd, the positive thinking crowd, or even positive psychology looks at it. I'm more of a disciple of Milton Erickson, who was one of the greatest hypnotists of all time. Milton Erickson trusted the unconscious mind. The secrets to your healing, the secrets to your success are in the unconscious. Freud would have disagreed with that. He would have said your neurosis, your psychosis, your deepest problems are hidden in the scariest, Halloween version of a scary movie, in the unconscious darkness of your own mind. Mind science, law of attraction, The Secret, positive thinking, Zig Ziglar, Napoleon Hill, they don't agree with that. And that would explain why we're not going to bring up Freud. I wrote a blog article, 10 years ago, and it said, Freud was wrong.
So would you say a lot of these mindset experts, if you really want to be great like yourself to learn about mindset, you would have to start with Freud, to like him or not? You probably should start around that time, because that's when would you say he's basically the grandfather of a lot of this stuff, even though his ideas don't necessarily jive with the mindset community? It's the foundation. Of course, you build upon a foundation or completely dismiss it, but kind of like
I would not agree that he is the foundation. He is one of the dominoes in a long line of dominoes that began in ancient Greece.
Yeah, that's true.
And I would say that the ancient Greece and even Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Socrates, all of them really set the foundation for psychology for today. that actually everything has been built on it and reinterpreted because of it. And there have been numerous teachers along the way who came out with their own views of life, which is a philosophy or a psychology. If you pick up any of the encyclopedia of psychology books, you're going to find a long list of people who made contributions. For a while, they were considered gods and authorities, and then for a while, they were made fun of. And you will find that Freud is on one page in a huge book of other pages of other people. So he's not the foundation. He's definitely a stepping stone and a domino that has an influence that we need to be aware of and understand. But I don't know that we want to buy into it. I'd rather go with, if it was me, I'd rather go with Carl Jung. I think he was more positive and saw the unconscious as a doorway to wisdom.
Thank you, Dr. Joe. Beautiful. All right. So next, we're going to talk about something that you'll probably really like. Are we our thoughts?
Are we our thoughts? There's a lot of scientific evidence that says that the body is really the subconscious mind in concrete form. So depending on what, again, belief system you subscribe to, we're not only our thoughts, but everything around us are our thoughts. We have created reality based on our thoughts. But again, this is where the clarification is so essential. It's not your conscious thoughts. It's your subconscious thoughts. You can consciously sit there and think all kinds of things and have none of them happen. You have to go a little deeper to the subconscious / unconscious mind. And that's where life is being created from that point.
Beautiful. Thank you, Dr. Joe. How powerful is a thought?
How powerful is a thought?
Yeah, one thought. How powerful is a thought?
Nuclear force powerful. It just takes a thought to start a whole campaign, to end a life, to begin a life, to change a direction. I mean, nuclear power.
And on that thought, excuse the pun, can one thought change the world?
Absolutely. Yes. You know, the thought, right now I'm thinking back to, I think it was in the 70s, 80s, there was a lot of television commercials that were coming out, and they were all about ending hunger. And the thought it was trying to put out, and did put out, is that ending hunger is a thought whose time has come. And there was a movement to end hunger that helps, you know, reduce what was going on out there at the time. I don't know if it's still in effect, but it's the whole idea that when you introduce a thought, you're introducing something that can change the world. I created a movement to end homelessness, I don't know, 10 or 15 years ago. It's called Operation Yes. There's a website, operationyes.com. And the whole concept is we can end homelessness in the United States. And that thought alone can change reality.
That's brilliant. Doria Cordova, I was thinking as you were saying that, DC Cordova Money and You program.
Oh yeah, I know her.
So yeah, Doria was on
Great
here.
lady.
We become good friends. She's doing something not with homelessness per se, maybe with that too, but basically ending hunger worldwide. You know,
Yes.
so she's got this program out there, and I was thinking that
it's the same theory. Introduce an idea. It might seem controversial, but put some movement behind it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Dr. Joe. All right, we're moving along, making great time in here. Okay, we're going to pivot into, actually one more thought on this, then we're going to pivot into some business finance questions. What can one book change the world?
Yes, absolutely. And I long to be an author of that kind of a book. But there have been books, well, first of all, the Bible has changed the world, so we can just look at that. And then you can look at books like Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl that is sold in the millions. And we've mentioned repeatedly Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And a book that influenced me that's still in print is The Magic of Believing by Claude Bristol. Any of these books, any one of these books has already put a dent in the consciousness of the planet and still is doing it for those who pick up the books and read them. So yes, one book can do it.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Dr. Joe. Big fan of Dr. Frankl. Actually, I have his quote on the cover of my last book here, Survival of the Richest.
Nice.
You know, talking about Hiroshima and Auschwitz. You know, we really haven't learned our lessons since in so many ways. All right. Thank you, Dr. Joe. All right. We're going to pivot into some business questions. What role has networking played in your life?
Networking is a secret to success. In my P.T. Barnum book, There's a Customer Born Every Minute, I mentioned it as one of the 10 things he did to build an empire. Networking is meeting other people and they help you as you help them. I think this is cosmically a great thing to do, spiritually a great thing to do, financially a brilliant thing to do. On all levels, I think this is the way things happen. I mentioned Nightingale Conant and how the fellow who had written to me, reaching out through a network of online communication, is the reason I ended up with my first program with Nightingale Conant. There was networking there. So it's a secret to success.
You know, I forgot to ask you while you were talking about that earlier, Dr. Joe, when that fellow reached out to you at that time, was the Earl Nightingale company, was that still as popular in 1998 when they contacted you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. They started in 1960 and they were going strong all the way into the new century. They've weakened over time, but yeah, they were still great in 98. Yes.
They're still around today too, right?
Yeah, they are around. You can find their audios at nightingale.com. Yeah. Okay.
The reason I asked you that, because your story actually sounds very similar to when Jim Cathcart was telling me his story. And I believe Dennis Waitley's story as well, that basically they both had this idea of getting, you know, in touch with Earl Nightingale and being able to be a part of what he created. And like in the Jim Cathcart situation, it took like 5 to 10 years. And finally, one day he got a call, you know, from them. It was the same idea, what happened to you. And it was like, now they're selling his books. Dennis Waitley, same thing. Now they're selling his stuff. I mean, it took, you know, a series of years, but life went 360 from going in Jim Cathcart's situation. He worked for a housing department. He was just sitting there, you know, twiddling his thumbs. And one day he just went full circle. Same with you, I guess, you know,
I don't know that there's an overnight success unless you define overnight as 10 to 30 years.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Joe. All right. So a few more questions here. Is mentoring important? And who are some of your mentors?
Mentoring is crucial. Mentoring is, I hate to say another secret to success, but it is another secret to success. It is certainly a secret to my success. In every area of my life, I've sought mentors to help me. When it was copywriting, I looked for the mentors. Bob Bly, who at that point was an author I communicated with. Today he's a friend and a peer. But I looked for everybody. When I was, gosh, where do I even start? There's so many things to say about mentoring. You know, this might seem odd, but at one point I was into strongman training. And strongman training is when you take horseshoes and you bend them in your bare hands. You take a steel bar and crunch it, or you drive a nail through a board. You know, it's like circus tricks, but these are strongman feats of strength. And I was fascinated. And I knew and had met the Dennis Rogers, one of the greatest strongmen of all time. He was on Oprah. And when I decided I wanted to learn some of these things, I hired him and I hired other mentors in that field, like Iron Tamer David Whitley. And Iron Tamer David Whitley came to my gym. I was living in Wimberley, had my own gym, Wimberley, Texas, had my own gym. He flew down there and gave me mentoring and how to do these things. And the thing with mentoring is that it collapses time. You don't need to spend as much time or length of time learning something, because somebody who's already can show you the shortcuts, can show you the hacks, can show you things that you wouldn't find on your own without a lot of trial and error. So I'm a big believer in mentoring. Absolutely.
Dr. Joe, I'm just curious. In my life, I know, unfortunately, it worked out this way, but hearing your story today, at what point did you get it about the mentoring thing, that like you need a mentor to do what you said, to shortcut, like, when did that really click to you? I mean, of course, we all have mentors. We got our parents and coaches and stuff like that. But when you get it, when you need a mentor for a specific specialty that you're involved with, you want to excel in, you got to get that mentor. Like, when did that click? Was that in your 30s, maybe your 40s?
Well, it was in the 1990s, and I'd have to do the math to figure out if that was 35 or whatever it was. But I had tried so long to do everything on my own and was failing at it, or at least taking forever at it, that I finally realized that trying to do everything by yourself is a recipe for failure. That having a mentor, having somebody that could be a coach, that could be a counselor, that could be somebody who believes in you and holds you accountable as well as instructs you, having all of that will turbocharge and accelerate your road to success. I would say that happened probably in the 90s. And as I started to see results happen faster for me, that's when I realized I need to always have a mentor. When I was getting ready to speak in Peru, I wanted to learn enough Spanish to be able to give all or part of my presentation in Spanish, partially for my own gratification and partly to win the crowd. There were 20,000 people there, and I wanted to impress them. I hired a mentor, somebody who can teach me Spanish in a short amount of time. And I did give my presentation in part in Spanish. Wow. And I was interviewed by the media, and I spoke all of my answers in Spanish, but I couldn't have done it without a mentor.
No, I appreciate that. You know, for me, I always had mentors in my hobbies and stuff, like martial arts. I trained with a guy who won 9 world championships in Muay Thai, you know, people like that. But in my own life, it was only till recently that I got Sharon Lechter involved. She's my mentor, Rich Dad Poor Dad co-author, where I realized, you know, that you need living ones. Now, let me clarify what I say by that, and let me see what your opinion is. I always read, I consider myself a scientist, so I read dead people. That's what I did during my 30s. As an online professor for 10 years, I read all the greatest scientists and all that stuff, but they're dead. They're not living. And I didn't click for me later that I needed to get that same concept I was doing in martial arts to my specialty, to get someone who's alive, a live mentor, to take me to that next step. Would you agree with that? I mean, you can't depend on just dead mentors. There's got to be a living mentor.
It's interesting you use the phrase dead men. Well, first of all, almost all of the knowledge we want is in books, which is why I always turn to books when I first want to learn something. Those dead men are alive to me. And I have joyful experiences and great insights that come to me from reading their wisdom. I have an old copy of Marcus Aurelius's Meditations book, which was written, I think, in AD 180. Wow. And the wisdom that he passed on, I can still use today. But you are correct. When it comes to actually learning faster and getting feedback, you need your mentor. When I was doing strongman training, I went to the books. I have some of the oldest, most cherished books on bending steel. But looking at the diagrams and reading the description didn't actually help me bend a nail. I had to be with a mentor who showed me, oh, hold it like this and think this and move your shoulders like this. And then I could do it. All of that was probably in the book, but having a mentor who was living in front of me, looking at me, giving me the feedback, collapsed time and made me able to do it.
That is a beautiful response. Thank you, Dr. Joe. Appreciate that. All right. So we have a few more questions left, more financial related now. What are your favorite financial books? Maybe a minute or less.
Favorite financial books? I don't really have any favorite financial books. I have finance people who take care of the finances. So a wealth management guru is doing that for me. So I'm not reading the finance books. If you mean traditional finance and banking and real estate or stocks or whatever, not me.
And any books on business or anything that you like? I mean, Think and Grow Rich, I guess, right? You can say.
I read lots of books on business. I love reading biographies of different business people because I can learn from their mistakes. And so looking at those books is very, very important to me. And of course, I'm looking at stacks of books that I have. They're on everything. There's the new version of Dennis Waitley's book, The New Psychology of Winning. I read so many different things. Homeless to Billionaire is the true story of a guy who was homeless in Thailand and is now a billionaire. And how did he become a billionaire? He watched the movie The Secret, and he read my books, and he applied what he was learning. And how do I know the book? I helped him write it.
Wow.
Homeless to Billionaire.
That is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
We have a guy, Rex, who introduced me to you. I got to give Rex some props, by the way. Rex Sykes, folks, definitely connected me and Dr. Joe here. Appreciate you, Rex. He's connected me also to Rami. I can't say his last name correctly. Al-Batswani, I believe. He is also similar situation, homeless to the billionaire. He's coming on in a couple of weeks. So.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Joe. All right. So how important is, do we need money to survive?
Do we need money to survive? That's almost a trick question. In my book, The Awakened Millionaire, I say most people want more money. You don't need more money. You need more creativity. I think that's what we actually need is creativity. There have been many people, whether it's Tony Robbins and some of his self-help events or some of the other more confrontational self-improvement seminars, who kind of dump people in the street with 25 cents in their pocket and say, go get something to eat, go get a ride, come on back with your success story. And when they flounder about it at first, they go, this is impossible. But then they start to think and they start to use their creativity. And the next thing you know, they're creating success. So yes, on one level, we need money to survive. On another level, we just need creativity.
Yeah, that's a beautiful response. I like that. Yeah, it reminds me of Grant Cardone. He was in the Undercover Billionaire show, and they dropped him off with very little money. Yeah. And he was able to be extremely creative. But from a macro perspective, in modern civilization, strip away bartering, you can't trade or any of that stuff. In modern civilization, in general speaking, I know sounds like a nonsensical question, but there's a method behind this. Would you say you need money to live today? Like you need money to function in society?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Joe. All right. Is finance necessary for everyone? Now, finance, the scientific version of finance, not funding or any of that stuff.
Excuse me. Say that again. Is finance necessary?
Yeah. Is finance necessary for everyone?
I think.
Now, I'll define my version of finance, a definition, which is very different. Even though it sounds very simple, it's very different than what's out there. It's the management of wealth for individuals, groups, and organizations, which is a different term than economics, which is the management of wealth for nations and its divisions. This sounds very simple, but in all the textbooks that I taught over the years, no one has ever really specifically broken it down like that, which led to a lot of my major conclusions. So finance, the science of finance, is that necessary to manage wealth?
Yes. Yes, I would say we need to understand that. We need to implement that. I think that is another one of the secrets to success.
Right on. Thank you, Dr. Joe. All right, 2 questions left. Actually, 3 questions. How important is having a purpose in business? And what is your purpose?
I think having a purpose is essential. It's crucial. It's another one of the secrets. It's Viktor Frankl who said that it's man's search for meaning. That's his whole book, Man's Search for Meaning. We want that meaning in our life, and we want that meaning in our business. Now, for me, I believe my life calling is to inspire people to go for and achieve their dreams. Since my business is an extension of that, my business is to do the same thing. Now, whether my business is something like this, which I'm hoping does inspire people to go for their dreams, or any of the books I've written, my latest book is called Karmic Marketing, and I would hope that karmic marketing would inspire people to go for their dreams, or any of the movies. There'll be a movie coming out in 2022 about Think and Grow Rich, and I'm in that. Wow. I'm hoping that it also inspires people. So my business mission is similar to my life mission, because both of them feel like they're coming from what Joe is here to do.
That's awesome. Thank you, Dr. Joe. By the way, this video right here, as of about 4 weeks ago in Clubhouse, they allow a link at the top of the stage. And I know you haven't really experienced the stage in Clubhouse yet, but it's a huge improvement compared to the primitive days when Clubhouse. So the link I'm going to post is to this video, so everyone can see the interview while you're on stage. It's a really cool feature. So that's why we're going the distance with this. We're definitely going to help you achieve your purpose. So what would you like to accomplish in the next 10 years or so?
Wow. I now have my own television show. It only started a couple of weeks ago. It's Zero Limits Living TV, and you can find it on Roku and Amazon and, you know, Apple and everywhere else, or just go to ZeroLimitsLivingTV.com, and there's a link there. I would love for that show to have a million or more subscribers, that it's so hot and so inspiring that people can't wait to tune into it, that it's actually causing people to have transformations. And I would love to write another book, or have one of the books I've already written be of such a life redefining success for people that it becomes one of those books that we mentioned earlier, that just one book can awaken somebody in their life. And I'm also working with a film producer to make a movie of one of my most popular books, Zero Limits, which is the book that brought Ho'oponopono, a Hawaiian healing system, to the masses. And I would love for that book to be a Hollywood smash hit, not because of whatever it might bring me, but because that would mean that it reached millions of people. So all of that and more.
That's beautiful. Well, anything I could do to help your goals, Dr. Joe, I'm here. I became a marketing guru like yourself for this very same reasons, because nice. I know that the only way to get any of these goals to fruition is to figure out how to attract the eyeballs, right? To get people's attention. So yeah, thank you, Dr. Joe. Commend you, and congrats on your new TV show, by the way.
Oh, thanks.
All right, last question. What would you like to be your legacy to this world?
I have an image of my head of a tombstone, and on it is engraved the words, "He inspired us."
Thank you, Dr. Joe. Appreciate that. Okay, well, that's a wrap. I appreciate you hanging out with me today, Dr. Joe, and going through this great interview. Learned so much about you, and I am extremely excited about the Clubhouse event, which basically the guest speakers are there for about 2 hours, but I've been running those rooms probably from like 6 to like midnight. Sometimes it goes to 2 in the morning. So very excited about that. It's going to be a great evening. Would like to allow you to spend some time to talk about any of your books or products or anything you'd like to talk about before we close out. Definitely, feel free to promote if you want. The floor is yours. So thank you, Dr. Joe.
Well, first of all, thank you. I'm honored and impressed. You did a lot of research. You asked a lot of questions, and this went very deep. So thank you for doing that, and thanks for the honor of being here. I mentioned my most recent book is called Karmic Marketing. And karmic marketing is something I've been practicing for decades, but I never wrote about it. I alluded to it a couple times in interviews, and I think I wrote a blog post in 2008. But I finally have a book. It's brand new. Karmic Marketing, the most magnetic method for attracting wealth. And karmic marketing is really a spiritual principle that's applied to marketing. So I just wanted to mention that. If people are really interested in what I'm doing, I have a 3 products for $3 kind of an offer. It's at ZeroLimitsMethod.com, ZeroLimitsMethod.com, and you can check it out what the 3 products are. It'll go into the law of attraction and Ho'oponopono and some other things. And I guess the other thing I would say is watch my TV show. It just started. I'm just getting my feet wet and learning how to row the boat there. But go to ZeroLimitsLivingTV.com And I promise to give inspiration and information every Friday. So join me there. Outside of that, keep on the sunny side of life and expect miracles. Thanks again, Dr. Finance.
Thank you, Dr. Joe. And you're all over social media. So folks, if you want to find Dr. Joe on Facebook, Instagram, right, Dr. Joe, where are you located? Pretty much everywhere, right?
Yeah, on Facebook, I'm Dr. Joe Vitale, Dr. Joe Vitale. Same with Instagram, Dr. Joe Vitale. Twitter has my nickname, Mr. Fire, MRFIRE.
How did you get that name, by the way?
Oh, that was way back in the 90s. A woman I was seeing at the time, she said, every time I get around you, you light a fire under me to do something, and you light a fire under everybody else when you talk to them, and you're just Mr. Fire. And the name stuck, you know. I was Mr. Fire for the next few decades. Wow. And some people still know me as Mr. Fire. So there you go.
That's awesome. All right. So you're basically everywhere on social media, and your books are found everywhere books are sold.
Yes.
Right? Okay. And what is your main website?
VitaleLifeMastery.com. VitaleLifeMastery.com. Has videos, products, freebies, book links, one-stop shop.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Dr. Joe. All right, we're going to conclude now. So, folks, this is Dr. Anthony Criniti IV, also known as Dr. Finance, and you've been watching the Dr. Finance Live podcast. If you want to find out more information about myself, you got the website right on my window here, drfinance.info. Also follow, like, and subscribe to this if you're watching it on YouTube or any of the podcast directories that I'll be posting it out to, all of them, all the major ones at least, definitely on YouTube as well. And as far as the books concerned, I got 3 major books. I'm also involved with co-authoring other books, but these are my major ones. The Necessity of Finance, I wrote it for my students, teaching finance over 10 years ago. This was basically giving me an overview of the subject, but I found out I knew a lot more than I thought. And there was a lot of issues with the subject as it was taught. And this really clarified the myth, including the fact that we don't have a true Nobel Prize in finance. It's in economics. If you want to read all about that, read that. My second book, The Most Important Lessons in Economics and Finance, 218 principles that worked in finance 2,000 years ago and most likely 2,000 more years from now. And then my final book really went off the deep end with The Survival of the Richest. It's a 500+ page book that built on all my different conclusions. And there's so many conclusions. This, the number one thing I would say right now is that we are the richest. Us, the species, human species, is the richest. And we need to learn to survive as a whole. So definitely, if you're into that, check that out. But other than that, folks, follow, like, and subscribe. Dr. Joe, appreciate you being here again. Any last minute thoughts or conclusions before we wrap up?
My catchphrase is expect miracles. So I would say go out there, be happy, keep on the sunny side, and expect miracles.
That is awesome, folks. And don't forget, January 7th is a Friday night on my normal, typical Friday night classes on Clubhouse. We got a master class. Dr. Joe Vitale is going to be there 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern time if you can make it. 2022. That's right, folks. Just a few weeks from now. So, Dr. Joe, if you can wait for me in the waiting room as soon as it's over, I just want to walk you out. Other than that, folks, thank you again. Appreciate you. We're going to see you on the next episode. Take care for now. Bye-bye.